Rather than finish the blade in this thing that I made here, just the melamine, I went ahead and made a proper, we'll call it proper, it's proper enough, saw vise. I guess that's what you call it. That's what I'm going to call it anyway. So the biggest advantage of this one is that I can actually put it up here in my higher vise, and that way I'm up higher. This one down here is too low. I had to bend over too much, so this is a much better arrangement right here. After all the work to shape the teeth, I'm using a flat file to level them. Just running my file across here, I can see that I hit every tooth. That's what you want to do. You want to make sure that your file marks every single tooth. Then you can take your triangular file and file it down so that you can't see a flat spot on there anymore. I'm just going to do a stroke until I can see that the flat spot is gone on the tooth that I'm working on. Okay, so that was a lot of work. It took me quite a while to get all of the teeth leveled, and it's looking pretty good now. All of the teeth feel nice and sharp. I don't have any more flat spots on. I've got one more, I've got the final sharpening to do, but first, before I do that, I've got to set these teeth. And to do that, I'm going to leave it in the vise. I'm going to take my clamps off the end. I'm going to take the blade, loosen my vise, and lift the blade up. So it's sticking up about, I don't know, 1.5 inches. You know, like I said, I'm not an expert on this, you know, so I'm just going by what I remember, you know, seeing old-time carpenters do this kind of stuff. My father was a carpenter also, but he used to take a glass cutter and cut a little slot in it with the hacksaw and use that to set the saw. He was not too particular about this stuff. So I have a real saw set that I just recently bought that I think was like 25 bucks, but it's a good investment if you have a few saws that you want to keep tuned up and keep sharp. So the way this works is that you take it and you slip it down over and you line it up with the tooth that you want to set, and what it will do is it will bend it that way. So I'm going to do all of the teeth that go that way. Then I can flip the blade around and do the teeth that bend the other way. Now they say in the instructions that the set should be no more than half the thickness of the blade itself. So I'm looking pretty good here. I'm looking very even across also. Okay, we're getting very close to the end finally with the blade here. All I need to do is drop it back down into the vise here and give it the final sharpening. And that'll just be like a single stroke or two straight across. Well, that's it. Finally, the blade is done. Final sharpening. It feels dangerous. I wouldn't want to accidentally bump my elbow on that or something. It'd be pretty bad. I'll get it out of here. Now, I do have another operation to do with the blade before I can put it in the handle. The holes that are in here, these bolts that I have won't fit through them, so I'm going to have to enlarge these holes. It looks almost like they were punched through or stamped through. Anyway, I'll try to drill those out, but first I'm going to get to the handle and get some work done on that. So here's the handle. I'm not going to do a lot with it. In holding it, I find that these sharp edges here are a little bit too harsh, so I'm going to try to get rid of them. Also, in the grip area here, I don't like to have any kind of finish, so I'm actually going to sand all the finish off of this everywhere on the handle, and I'm just going to give it a single coat of linseed oil just to give it the minimum protection. This handle of this saw will probably never leave this workshop, probably never be out in a wet environment, so it'll be fine. First thing I'm going to do is get this little emblem off here, and as far as I know, that's just pinned in. That should just pry right off. I'm going to use the sander here to sand most of the finish off the face, then I'm going to do the rest by hand. Alright, I got the faces stripped of finish and sanded down a little bit. I don't want to go crazy with this. This is not going to be a museum piece or anything. And I'll put it here in my vise and try to get the rest of the finish off with my little pry bar here. So I've got my pry bar sharpened on this end into a scraper. It works really good for removing finish like this. Just gonna sand it a little bit. I'm not, like I said, I'm not looking for perfection here. All right, so on the inside here, I'm not gonna bother to do much. I'm gonna take the sandpaper and give it a little bit of rub down. Not too worried about it, especially on this side. On the handle side where I want to get rid of that ridge, I'm going to use my carving knife. Now I could use the router, I could put a half round bit in the router and do that, but you know, sticking with the unplugged theme, I might as well use my carving knife that I made a couple of years ago. And people have asked me, you know, when are you going to use that knife? Well, I do use it, I just don't make any videos of me using it. So I'm just going to take this and cut away the sharp ridge. All you carvers out there looking at me doing this, you're saying, oh, he's holding it wrong. Well, I'm holding it so you guys can see it on the camera. So otherwise I would be holding it differently. Mainly what I'm trying to do here is just get rid of that really sharp ridge, and then I'll smooth it out with the sandpaper afterwards. Okay, so I've got the handle all sanded to make it comfortable. It feels great. I got most of the finish off too. There's a fair bit of staining here on this side here. I'm not going to worry about any of that. Like I say, this saw is not for decoration. This saw is to be used. Well, it'll actually be decorating my shop while I'm not using it. I don't intend on using it too often, but when I do need it, it'll be handy. So I'm going to put the little emblem back on, but first I'm going to get a little bit of epoxy behind it to hold it in there to make sure it doesn't come out. Although it stayed there for as long as, you know, ever since the saw was made. So, but, you know, it takes a minute to mix up a little bit of epoxy and get that on there. Now, this is 5-minute epoxy, so it sets up fairly fast. People have asked me, you know, what kind of epoxy I use. I use this kind here, but you know, that brand might not be available where you are. The way that you can tell a good epoxy is that it stinks. It smells like, I don't know, it smells like diarrhea maybe. It doesn't smell very good. I haven't got very much here, and you know, it's pretty pungent. So I'm gonna mix that up. That's another thing people do wrong is they don't thoroughly mix it up. This is 5-minute epoxy. That means it's going to set up fairly well in 5 minutes. So you got lots of time to mix it, believe me. And give it a thorough mixing. And then take a big hunk of it and put it on the back of the emblem here. And just put that back in place. Now I'm going to assume that it was pointing this way. So let's take that, try to get it in the same holes, and push it in. Now I've got my drill and the bit put in. Just going to check to make sure it is tight. And I'm going to put some oil on the drill bit. And I'm going to go slow. I'm not going to go fast here. I'm going to cut through the wood first and then work on the metal. The steel is tough. There it goes through, but it's not, hasn't completely cut it. Okay, that's it. That's that one done. Yeah, so that's what it looks like. It's catching the two flutes on the sides there. Just gonna have to work at it. The better tool, or the better drill bit for drilling sheet metal is a step drill. You always have better results with that. It won't catch like that. It cuts a clean hole every time. I may actually just do the third and fourth hole with this, roughly, take it off, and then ream it out with the step drill. Well, I finished drilling the holes with the step drill, and that worked out fine. Now I can put the handle, the blade in the handle and see if the bolts fit in. And that one slips in fine. That one's okay. And that one just goes in really nice and smooth. So like I said before, I only got 3. I'll look in the meantime for another one. But you know what? If I don't find it, it's not a big deal. 3 bolts are holding the handle on my 26-inch saw, and a lot of other saws that I've seen. So, you know, it's just a cosmetic thing. There's a hole there, but who cares? Okay, so I got the bolts put in. I had a little bit of difficulty with them. They were bottoming out on the blade, actually, so I had to shorten them a little bit. But no big deal, now they're all in. I also took one of the old ones from the original saw, and I actually took 2 and cut the studs off, and I just glued them in the hole here to fill up the hole. Looks good. Like I said earlier, I'm going to give the handle just a single coat of linseed oil. I get some on my paper towel here and just spread that on in around the handle and rub it in real good. Okay, so that's the handle done, and that means that the saw is done. I just need to, I don't need to, but I want to get a coat of paste wax on the blade to keep it from rusting, and also to make it glide through the wood a bit better. Makes it slipperier, more slippery, I could say. I'm just going to take some on the paper towel here and rub it in on both sides, and then wipe off the excess. Okay, so I gave the wax a few minutes to dry, and now I'm just wiping off the excess and buffing it up here a little bit. And that's it. It's ready to use or go back up on my shelf, which is what I'm going to do with it right now. The only problem with this is that it has the side facing out that doesn't have the little Mybro emblem. But you know what? It's not very pretty anyway, so that's okay. Well, that's it for that. I hope you liked it, and thanks for watching. Beautiful cut.